So like I said before, this wind area is on the whale migration area that I talked about, and it also happens to be on the Pacific Flyway. We value our birds here. Morro Bay is a national estuary. It is a bird sanctuary, and we are right on the Pacific Flyway. Well, what happens with those birds is when they migrate and they start to, they head in either direction. Many of them do come in and they overwinter here. But they usually migrate offshore. They come in on the storms, they come in, with the wind at their back, and then they will, they take a little detour. Like, when we go on a road trip and you take off and go, oh yeah, there's the dinosaur boats. So they kind of sort of take their little detour and they come on in. And what happens is they're going to be going right through that wind energy area with these turbines that are spinning around. And the turbine blades can be operating at upwards of 170 miles per hour. And when these birds are migrating at night, and they have it within their DNA to migrate through that area, and that's not something like, ooh, I'm going to take a little detour here. It is something that they do, and they do consistently, and they will perish when they fly into these. And we've seen it on land. All kinds of birds are killed in these wind turbines, including eagles, etc. Different birds, the soaring birds most especially, are going to be at the greatest risk. That includes the albatross, pelicans, shearwaters, and then all of the rest of the migratory birds. Next one. Upwelling. This is what you wanted to know about upwelling. So an upwelling is, and it's driven by the wind. What happens when you have these wind farms is what they do is they reduce the amount of wind on the downwind side. So the upwellings are going to be several miles. They're going to be south of the wind area. And they estimate that the upwelling, or the amount of wind and the efficiency of the wind, is going to be lessened by at least 15%. And an upwelling is where the wind is driving. It is basically driving, and this shows you right here. The turbines are going to block the downwell upwelling efficiency. But what happens is the wind comes up and it drives the cold water to come up from the bottom, which is incredibly rich in nutrients. Lots of zooplankton, phytoplankton, and it is literally, it feeds so many animals out there, and so it is basically, all of these critters are coming up, and it is very, very important for the entire food chain, for these upwellings to be efficient and for them to continue to happen. And there are ones that aren't persistent, there are ones that are seasonal. We have persistent upwellings here on the Central Coast. And also, if those upwelling structures don't happen, if that dynamic doesn't happen, then it also warms the ocean. And these guys are, talking about not wanting the oceans to be warmed, and it's one of their major things. Well, offshore wind is going to warm the oceans. Next. Okay, so the cables. I've already kind of sort of described that those cables are going to have to be dredged at least 6 feet deep. They're going to be going into nearshore waters. But there's some real issues with the cables once they are in place. They are subject to manufacturing defects, and they break all the time. And not as it just expensive and a total pain in the fanny. When they have to go down and get to those, they destroy the benthic, community all around when they're trying to fix the cables and relay cables. And installation issues. I mean, it's just, there are so many issues with the cables, and they have been in operation in Europe and on the East Coast for long enough for them to see this dynamic. They do not last. They have major issues with them. They also emit EMFs. Yeah. And there are especially very specific fish species that are really affected by that, because it really messes up their ability to be able to geo-navigate and to be able to migrate. And it also really messes up some of the smaller animals in the benthic community, and it can deform them. And I mean, they are still doing research on what EMFs can do to biological systems. Not good. So all of these things, I mean, these cables are already going to be there. We're going to have to deal with them constantly, digging them up, trying to fix them, the kind of EMFs, the kind of ocean warming that happens when these cables are buried. Next. Substations, I've already gone into that a little bit, but they're big. Take a look at, so that's a picture of an SOV. These things are huge, and they're going to be closer to shore. So they are going to be very visible. You could kind of sort of liken them to the oil derricks that we see offshore. That's kind of what you're going to be looking at. But they are ginormous. They're highly visible. They'll be located close to shore. I already mentioned that a minimum of 5, probably closer to 8 for the entire wind energy area. And here's another part of it, including the turbines. That technology is not completely developed yet for offshore wind. Offshore wind is still being developed. It is not completely, yeah, we're basically going to be a testing ground for them. What the substations are going to be doing, and this is a major no-no, and this is potentially a way that we can fight this project as well, is substations utilize to cool these substations just like you need, you know, cooling for power plants. They are utilizing once-through cooling, or some of you may know it as single-pass cooling. And that is banned by EPA. It was numerous years ago, I think it was about close to 12 years ago now, and they are currently using once-through cooling on the East Coast. I read through one of the documents, and they seem to have changed the name of it. So it's something we're going to have to be aware of. Next. The impact on the fishermen is going to be significant from minute number 1 with the surveys and with pre-construction. Literally, every single phase of this project is going to negatively impact the fishermen. They will have loss of fishing grounds. There are going to be navigation hazards. We've gone into that. But the loss of fishing grounds starts right at pre-construction. The surveys, they're going to be destroying essential fish habitat. They're going to be destroying areas where these fish, where they are breeding and what's the word?
Spying.
There we go. And then the loss of fishing opportunities, you know, throughout. They cannot go into the wind energy areas. Now, if they were allowed, they wouldn't go in anyway because of that whole net. It would be very, very dangerous for their gear. And also the increase in ship traffic. There are going to be constantly boats going back and forth to maintain for, you know, their employees, etc. And it's, you know, it's going to be constant noise. Anthropogenic noise is really bad for any and all marine creatures. And these big boats with their thrusters, that the decibel levels are at about 140 dBs, is going to affect all of the animals, and it's really going to affect the availability of fish for the fishermen. Next. Okay, so offshore wind is, we have thriving economy now, and it's, you know, our you know, Morro Bay is a fishing village, and it thrives on ecotourism. And that's what I do for a living. I'm a guide, and on recreation. I mean, we live in one of the most beautiful places on earth. And if they turn our ports into industrialized, or our harbors into industrialized ports, it is going to